in honor of Charlie Kirk for this specific episode, Phil's got his shirt, I've got my shirt, and Adam happens to be from Utah. So Adam, give us the down low on, on what the culture is like in Utah the past week. Obviously, it was a pretty tough time in America right now.
Yeah, no, it's really, really, it's kind of dark days. It's yeah, there's a lot of sadness, Utah's obviously a very conservative culture. Not everybody agrees with Charlie Kirk, and that's okay, right? But we can
That is
disagree,
perfectly
have a
fine.
discourse,
It's perfectly
right?
fine.
And the disagree and discourse is I think part of the American way. And yeah, I was speaking with an interview candidate on Friday. We're building like this little kind of crack team of ninjas to help us solve quick problems. Anyway, this very, very capable young man who had actually spent time working with Charlie directly in the last year or so.
What?
And
Wow. A full turning point?
yeah, and just had it's like he's villainized all in a lot of ways. Um, he's like the guy was a solid guy. The guy cared about his family.
Human being, a really
Yeah,
good human being.
He was a father. He was a husband. He was, had high degree of moral integrity. People may disagree with that, but I think no one can agree that he deserved what happened.
At the end of the day, a bullet to the neck over a political view is absolute bullshit. A bullet to the neck over a political view. This guy was a father. He had two beautiful kids, man, and a wife. Like,
over any disagreement on any opinion, right? It doesn't even have to be politics, right? To use violence against someone because you just don't agree with the words they're saying is so opposite of what all of us believe. I think the majority of us believe in this country, and it's not a left issue or a right issue. It's not political, even though Charlie Kirk was a political figure. All he was doing was sitting down, inviting people into a healthy conversation, a healthy disagreement and debate, and allowing them a microphone to share their opinion so he could share his. And yes, he had a strong viewpoint on where his opinion stood on certain things, but he never advocated for hate or violence. Even on some of the stuff that pressed his faith, right, with the biblical views on some of his different feelings, he never said that people don't belong. I heard him talking to someone about, I think it was on transgenderism or something, or on homosexuality. And they were saying, well, they don't belong in the Republican Party then. He's like, no. Because of my faith-based beliefs on the Bible, that I do have a struggle with that from that, but they still belong. We're all sinners. We're all people of faith that can improve, and they still belong with us. And I thought that was so powerful because no matter what you think, we all have a place on this earth to be together and be able to share it. So
yeah.
Just
I think
really tragic.
He went into the arena, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like,
talk about man in the arena, right?
He was, people ask him questions. It's not like he was going and insulting people. He would show up for a lively debate, and people would show up and they bring their questions, right? So
and his argument was so strong that people were so weak they couldn't come to the table with words, so they brought a gun. That's exactly what happened.
I think it was our governor who said this, and I'm actually, our governors had to walk kind of both sides of the aisle, right? It's what politicians have to do, especially when they're in leadership. And he said two things that I think stuck with me, and one was, there's too much rhetoric about words being violence. Words are not violence. Violence is violence.
Correct. Black is black, white is white.
And words being, microaggressions and come on, violence is violence. Words aren't violence. Let's get real about that. And then the second thing was, and I he's not the only one that said this, but how many cars were flipped over? How many stores got looted?
Buddy.
How many businesses burned? How many cops
that was
thrown
on the
rocks at
5.
them?
I think Tyrus also mimicked that. Like, look at how that your community reacted immediately to that situation, and there was no call for violence. There was no reaction. There was no running out and finding someone that looked or sounded like what you thought the shooter was. It was falling back on faith and communication, and let's use this as an inflection point to learn and grow. Like, this was a very much a pulling the wool back on what Charlie stood for, whether you agree with his opinion, because that's all he had was an opinion, right? Let's be honest. What he said wasn't gospel. He wasn't rewriting a Bible or writing a new Bible. He's just telling you what he thought and how he was going to live his life, and encouraged others to listen because maybe they would come along or debate him on why he was wrong. He never said, I'm going to tell you why you're wrong. In
Not
my opinion,
once.
and if someone can
Yeah.
correct me on that, reach out. You know how to get a hold of me.
Yeah.
I never heard him tell somebody you're totally wrong. Just if they would come with facts and they would say stuff pertaining to factual issues, but he never said your opinion's wrong. Just how
He just
he felt
questioned it
from
and
his.
just challenged it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And brought,
Yeah.
I mean, I know I didn't realize this till I really started digging into him a while ago, how smart he was and retaining information. It was, I think one kid was trying to debate him. This was overseas, I think. And they were trying to debate him on federalist policies in the government. And he went into like the colonies and the information behind what they actually stood for and, precursors to the Constitution. It was like, wow, this guy knows the facts to generate his opinion. And, my daughter this morning was watching the news with me, and there was some news about it, and she was asking, and they showed that kid, because his turning point's in Phoenix. They showed a kid that walked through the memorial that people had been placing in front yesterday and started kicking it all over.
Oh,
and,
yeah, I saw that video of that guy.
yeah, a 19-year-old kid, misguided, of course. I don't think he's a monster. He just, poor choice. He was wearing a shirt that mimicked what the shooter had on, which is interesting. So I didn't know that. I don't know where you get those. There'll be some ties to that. But, somebody grabbed him and threw him out of there, but didn't attack him. No one kicked him in the face. No one, tried to stab him. They just got him off the memorial. And my daughter watched some of this, and I try to keep her from that side of the stuff. But she says, why did this happen? Why did this guy do this? And I said, well, it's just, gave her the explanation. I said, that's in Scottsdale. She goes, can we go there today after school? She's 9. I said,
Oh.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell her what she has to think from a political standpoint. I'm just going to say, here's what this person stood for. Here's what people are feeling. And how do you experience that? So for me, I'm
Mhm.
like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's it's going to change Utah. I think, we have been fortunate not to endure, this kind of tragedy. School shootings never happen here. It's just a lot of kids grew up with guns, but they grew up being taught well how to, treat them as tools and respect them. And, Utah's kind of referred to as like the Texas of the Mountain West,
Yeah.
a
Strong
degree-
family values.
a
Strong
really
family
high,
values.
a high degree of personal ownership, personal responsibility, personal accountability, self-reliance. And I think this is kind of like a watershed moment for Utah to kind of look the devil in the face a little bit and
Yeah.
figure out where we're going to stand.
Well, Utah's
And-
definitely in our prayers up between two hats. That's for sure. 100%.
Yeah, it's sad. It's really sad that the kids, I talked to a Marine buddy of mine, Ryan. I think you've met Ryan. But he, knows what this feels and smells like. What he told me today is that you'll never forget what the smell is you had when you saw that. So the people that were there standing next to him and around him, and the crowd that was right immediately in front of him that
Yeah.
saw the explosion. I mean, basically it's an explosion. He goes, they'll never forget the taste and smell in the air after seeing that. As
Yeah.
human beings, we're not wired up to see somebody
No, no.
get shot by a
No,
high
no.
velocity round.
And-
It's just
and-
not who we are.
Half a gallon of blood just pouring out of the neck.
Yeah.
No
And,
way.
that's that they'll never get that back. And hopefully his death serves, like a lot of things in our country, people that have sacrificed. He didn't do it. He didn't sacrifice himself intentionally, but he did by putting himself out there. This serves as something way bigger than himself. That's my belief.
Yeah. It's, I don't know that he thought that he'd have to die for this, but no one thought it would be worth killing over either. Right.
Right.
Mm.
That's just crazy.